ever met royalty? And no, I'm not talking about that girl who posted one mildly clever tweet and was immediately crowned queen by the internet. I mean actual, bona fide, blue blooded royalty. Because I have, and her name is Connie Chi. Now, Connie is not out here in Manhattan wearing a tiara or waving from limos. She's way too busy turning other people into kings and queens as a top tier publicist. But before she was polishing reputations, she was polishing diamonds. Yep. She worked in the diamond industry, so technically, even if her ancestors left the throne behind, royalty never quite left Connie. Curious about her royal lineage, sparkling career, and how she makes modern monarchs? Grab your crown. Let's dive in. Okay, so Connie, thank you for coming. And
Of
such an
course.
interest. You're an actual princess.
I wouldn't say princess,
Okay.
but I do have royal bloodlines. Apparently, I was told by my family. And I didn't know this because growing up as a kid, I always thought I was a princess, or I was like the head princess when it was like doll time. So the story goes, and this is our family urban legend, from my father's side of the family. Apparently, my grandfather, we suspect, was like a CIA or some kind of spy for his country back then. And his grandfather was actually one of the generals to the emperors in China. So that side has the royalty. On my mother's side, my great great grandfather apparently was also a general for another emperor. And because of his loyalty and service to the king for so long, the king gifted him plots and plots and plots of land in Taiwan, I believe. What ended up happening was, because it was through marriage, their children got married, one of the wives ended up selling this large piece of mountainous land to the government to use as a cemetery.
Okay.
So our family lost a lot of our lands that way. So that was the royalty story, right?
Okay.
So a lot of, we on both sides, it was a lot of like generals and things like that.
Okay.
So
But the CIA thing, like the spy
Oh,
thing,
yeah,
is
yeah.
also interesting.
it totally is, right? So, I think, it's kind of like James Bond. So my grandfather started out as the chief of police. And then somehow, I don't know how this whole thing happened, but he started to do a lot more work with the government, and he wasn't able to tell his kids and family what exactly he did, but he spent a lot of time away from the home. And we know there was no second
Right.
marriage or anything like it. Wasn't even like that. It was a lot of secret government work he was doing. Until this day, we still don't know, but I want to know, but don't know where to dig.
That is so interesting. Maybe it could be a project for you. Just go through,
Yeah.
identify what's really happening in this
Right, but
this
back
family.
then there was no 23andMe, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So there's a lot of this was just passed down verbally.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
no one thought to write this down. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this would have been helpful.
Right.
Right? So apparently from my dad's side, they also had a lot of land. And there is a garden left. It's called the Chi Garden or something like that in China that actually belonged to our family, but was taken back by the government.
Were you compensated for it?
No, it was just like, you've lost it. Thank you. That was it. It's like, okay. well.
Okay, but you are now in the U.S. and you
Yeah.
you were born and raised.
I
here.
was born and raised in New York City. I am a New York City girl through and through.
Okay, and we were just talking. So you said that you can fluently speak
Mandarin.
Mandarin, but you can't write.
I cannot read or write it to save my life,
Yeah, okay,
right?
but have you tried?
I have. I can write my own name, right? That's important. And then if you're asking me to read and identify characters, I got large, small, and medium. That's That's it. Everything else, don't ask me.
Okay. Was it never imposed to you by your
It was
parents?
imposed. It was imposed. I dreaded. I went to Chinese school. My mom is actually a teacher. And, on
Oh.
Sundays, we would do, the church and the Chinese schools and things like that. And I hated it so much. It was very difficult for me. And it's like, I can't. It was a lot of being screamed at by my mom because I couldn't get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess one thing common among Chinese families, well, I guess Asian families, is the high expectations of parents as to what we will end up doing when we grow up. So what was it that you were expected to? You're the eldest, right?
Yes. I'm the
Okay.
oldest one.
What was it that they wanted you? Doctor, lawyer, was it?
I think it was doctor.
Okay.
It was doctor. And then, I think at some point my mom started to realize that once I was in high school, I was not going to be following her rules. So that's why she didn't let me get my license when I was in high school. I didn't even get a permit. She wouldn't allow me to get a permit. I didn't even learn how to drive
To this day.
until I was much older. And I had no choice.
Okay. So how did you, and you said you took up marketing in college.
Yes.
What led you to that?
It was an easy major. That's the truth. It was the easiest major that I could pick from, right?
Okay.
I'm not good in math, and I will be the first to admit that. Economics.
Don't let other Chinese hear that.
I know, right? I wasn't good in economics. That's not my thing. Science didn't really move me much. You don't make much money in history, right? Teacher, I mean, what was I really going to teach? All these was like not under my belt. So I'm like, marketing's easy.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you took up marketing. What did you end up doing first, right out of college? The first job that you had.
The first job that I actually had a few. One of them was working for a children's backpack company in licensing. I don't remember the details of that, but I did that. It was miserable because I didn't understand, there was all this language, the gusset, the PVC, this and that. I was like, this is the boringest thing on this planet. So we did that. And then I said to myself, you know what? I want to be in a world where people are really good at sales. Because I thought people who were salespeople were kind of cool. Like they got to convince other people to do things for them, buy from them. It was the coolest thing to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm in New York. Who are the best salespeople that I know? At least that I've seen. Insurance, I thought they were sleazy. So I was like, I'm not going to do insurance. But on 47th Street, you have the best diamond salespeople. Diamond salespeople are very good at selling you what? Diamonds. You don't really need it, but they will sell you anything. The rule of thumb in that industry is if it's not nailed to the floor, you can sell it. So I said, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Problem is, how do I get in there?
Okay.
No experience. I don't know anybody. That is a very tight industry where the business is passed down generation from generation, right? And I understand that. So luckily, I did a little bit of research, and apparently there was this one headhunter in New York that would find people to place into the diamond industry. And I said,
okay.
I'm going there.
Okay.
So I sold myself to him, and I said, listen, I am a new face, right? You have an opportunity to make commission off of me. And I'm like, why not give it a shot? In high school, I worked at Lord & Taylor behind the counter selling jewelry to people. I did it all of high school, some of college. I have the experience. He said, well, you're going to have to start all the way at the bottom. I'm like, how bad can the bottom be? So, okay. He got me my first job in the diamond industry. And you know what I did? I was opening up FedEx boxes with diamonds pasted in there, taped to the box. I was open all day, 5 days a week, 8 hours. That was my sole job. And I would have to look at the diamond, make sure it's real, make sure it matched the paperwork that it was sent. Sometimes it was like a lot of diamonds in a big box. You go through one by one.
Okay.
That was my first job.
Okay. And you said that you had to start from the bottom, and you said how bad can it be? So how bad was it?
Oh, It's bad. I'm going to tell you this story that I will never forget. First job doing this, I'm like, okay, great. You're going through about 30 boxes a day. It's very easy. Just imagine how small a diamond is. It's very easy to lose a stone. So I remember this one day, you're in a suit, you're dressed up, you're professional, you're unboxing all these diamonds, you're asking yourself the meaning of life and why am I doing this? And then at the end of the day, they have to tally up to see what came in and if it matched the number of stones. Well, I was missing one stone. Now, the thing is, you sign an agreement which says any stone that you lose, they will garnish your paycheck until the whole damn stone is paid for.
Oh my gosh.
Well, guess what? The stone I lost was $50,000. I am a student that just came out from school. Like, I don't have 50,000. To me, that was like the biggest number. So now what do? I said, you know what? I'm not paying $50,000. I don't have it. I'm not paying it. I went dumpster diving in a suit. I went down to the basement, went through 20 floors of garbage, ripped all the bags apart to find this one damn stone. I found it in the dumpster. That's how bad it can get. $50,000.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, you know what? I came back upstairs. I smelled like people's lunches. Like, I don't care. I was like, here's your stone. And I cried in the office. That was how bad it was.
Okay. So from there, moving into, you said that you eventually started selling diamonds and you were traveling the entire country.
Yes.
Carrying millions of dollars of diamonds and nobody
Yes.
even knew. So how did you move from opening boxes to actually wearing 1.5 million worth of diamonds to sell?
So essentially, I went back to the same headhunter. I said, listen, I'm ready to go. I want to go work at another company. And this time, I want to be an actual salesperson. He's like, but you have no sales on the road experience. I said, no problem. But I also have this diamond experience under my belt now. I'm willing to do like an account executive or a customer service position and just kind of work my way up there.
Okay.
So he found me another position and with another company. And I did basically customer service working alongside the number one salesperson in that company. So he taught me a lot of things about sales. And eventually being there for a while, they said, you know what? This salesperson has so many clients because we were handling all of the East Coast. He can't be at 15 places at once. Would you mind kind of pitching in and traveling to some of these events with stones and, just to help out? Sure, no problem. My first trip out, I will never forget this. I went to Tennessee. It was either Tennessee or West Virginia, one of those. Now, New York girl, sunglasses, I think I'm fabulous. I have 6 million diamonds in my bag. I get off the plane. Everyone looked at me like I didn't belong. Not only that, I saw Confederate flags. And I was like, you're kidding me, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is stuff you see in the movies.
All
Like,
right.
I've never experienced it firsthand. And I'm like, I don't even want to leave the airport. But I have no choice because I have clients that's waiting for these stones.
Oh my God, yeah.
So my client came to pick me up. I had about 6 million on me. He opens his trunk, shotgun, 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 shotgun. And I'm like, I've never seen this before in my life. I'm in my 20s. And I'm like, do I panic? Like, what do I do? So, get in the car with him. I'm like, well, at least I have backup. But that was my first trip out with diamonds on me.
Right. And did he buy?
Of course he did.
Okay. At least after everything you went through.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
he owns retail stores down there.
Oh, okay.
So basically my job was to sell to all these retailers. Like I would sell to like the Van Cleef and Arpels, the Cartier, the Fortune Off when they were in business and things like that. So that's what I did.
All right. So how long did you do diamonds?
16 years. So I actually got certified in diamond grading, so I can actually look at a diamond, tell you color clarity, and what I say kind of is legitimate. Yeah.
Okay, so what made you leave?
I had this moment when I learned that in these companies for salespeople, they take out double life insurance on you. At the time, I was highly offended. How dare you put a price on my life? I can't believe it, right? And then I said to myself, if they're going to put a price tag on me, I want to go work for my dreams. I don't want someone to put a price on me. And, you know, later on, I came out, started my own company, and I learned the reason why they do this is because because we have a high risk job as diamond salespeople, you get robbed, you get kidnapped, you get the whole gamut. So in the case that there's death, one set of life insurance goes to the company, one set of life insurance goes to our families.
Okay.
And I was like, I can't. I'm going to start my own thing.
Yeah. But did that change your perspective, though?
On what?
Once you learned that, that's the reason for the insurance.
Well, later on, as I've gotten into business and become business owner myself of multiple businesses, I started to understand why they did it. And I understood the reasoning now behind it, right?
Are you still offended now? I'm
not offended, but I'm actually kind of impressed now, right? Because they're leveraging someone else's, life. And then I bet you, if they're doing it right, they might even be borrowing against these life insurance policies.
I guess, when I started becoming an entrepreneur, it shifts your perspective of things. Yeah.
It does.
A lot of the things that you thought were evil is like, that's smart.
That is, right? It's brilliant.
Okay. So before you got, though, into PR, you went through different businesses, you said.
I sure did.
Okay. And you said that you failed in some, succeeded in some. So what were the businesses before you got to what you're doing right now?
So, I started my first business. I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a life coach. It's trending. I can do this. I want to help people and make a difference. So I get into this whole life coaching business, and I was very committed at the moment, right? I'm going to get certified and this and that. And then I started to realize I just don't have the patience to listen to people's problems day in and day out. I'm like, this is not happening. So I stopped doing that. Then I said to myself, I'm going to be a private concierge consulting company, right? I know luxury, been in diamonds. I know how this all works. Well, that didn't work out because I didn't know where to get clients, right? Your high net worth clients are not going to come to somebody they don't know about who has no connections, right? So that was that. And then I was like, all right, let's go back to basics. What do I know? What do I have under my belt? What did I go to school for? I went to school with a degree in marketing, advertising, communication, minor in computer graphics. I have 2 things I can work with. So I said, okay, I'm going to start a marketing agency for yoga studios, right? That's a problem because yoga studios don't have that extra money to be paying a marketing agency. Learned that the hard way. So I had to close that down. And then I said, well, let's just do marketing agency, period.
Yeah, in general.
In general. So that way it gives me a little bit more leeway. So I did that. And my mom was actually my first biz dev person. She was free labor. She found me my first client, which is a Asian chain supermarket that was coming into New Jersey for the first time. And I landed them as a client.
Okay. So how did she find this company?
The newspaper.
So there was an ad and she thought this is a bad ad.
No, she actually was reading. Somebody was writing about introducing that this supermarket was coming in and they're coming in at where and when and what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. And my mom's like, hey, they're coming into New Jersey. New client, huh? It's like, okay, we'll give it a shot. See what happens.
So you pitched.
So I actually went online and found the marketing director for that company, and then I pitched.
Okay. Oh, wow. How long did you manage the company?
So I've managed them for, I want to say, about a good year or so.
And then from there, you start getting more clients.
Yeah.
Okay. So what made you transition from marketing to PR?
So a lot of our clients that we had was asking, if we would be willing to do PR. And I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to pitch. It's so hard. So they asked for a year. And ultimately, I was like, let me just do it. Let me just give it a shot because there's a reason why people are asking. And here we are 7 years in. We are a PR agency.
But you still do marketing.
I still do marketing, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what is the main, for those of the audience who don't know, what is the main difference between marketing and PR?
Well, I mean, it's think about it as inbound, outbound,
Okay.
right? So marketing, you are basically getting people to be aware of your brand, right? They want to know what you do, why they should buy from you, right? PR is more you want to attract, so there's an attraction and then there's an education part. So it's in and outbound. They're similar. I mean, with the industry, both industries now, what you're starting to see is that the marketing and PR agency is starting to meld together.
Right.
So, it's going to be an interesting turn in the next, like I would say, 2 to 5 years, and to see what happens with both industries and, what the trends are going to be.
Right, right. You mentioned earlier that you specialize in celebrities,
Yes.
not really products.
Yes, correct.
Was there like a special reason why you decided, no, I'm just going to do people instead of products?
For sure. I mean, for me, I feel like, when you spend time with a client, everybody wants to find the best clients who are easy to work with, fun and amazing, right? So for us, what's important is that every single client has a inspirational story, rags to riches, the underdog story, and they have to have the ability to impact community. With everything that's going on in the world, we just feel like if we're going to want to spend time with someone, why not spend time with somebody who can make a positive change?
Right.
So that's what we focus on, is a lot of these clients who have these amazing, inspiring stories. Like one client that we have, he's an actor in John Wick 3. When he was younger, he actually was involved in street fighting. He got to a point where he realized he had to make a change or else he was going to die.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that he said, you know what, I choose to be better. And because he turned his life around, he's in a lot of these movies, he's in a lot of these TV shows. He's also working with a lot of at-risk youths. He also goes into the prison system and speaks to the incarcerated population. So it's people like that that we like to work with. I think it's a lot more depth and there's a lot more soul to the person. And you can learn from them too.
Okay. All right, just walk me through the process. If somebody approaches you and says, okay, can you do my PR? Can you be my publicist? Can you go through the process of what you do for you to arrive at a specific plan for the client?
Well, first of all, I have to speak to them, right? Because I need to know what kind of person they are. For us, it's important to know because I need to know the good, the bad, and everything in between. Can we handle it? Will we be able to deal with it? And what other problems are going to arise from it? Do you have a criminal background? Do you have a drug problem? We ask all of these, and it's also like a little invasive, but we as a PR agency need to know what we're dealing with first before we decide if we're going to take you on. Okay. So there's a lot of online research that goes on. We go through the socials, we go through any past articles, mentions, of this person, and then we get on a call with him or her or them and basically learn about what they're looking for. Because if their expectations of a PR agency is off, we won't take them. For example, if a person says, I want you to rep me and make me famous, we're not the PR agency for you. Yeah, and because that's not what we do as publicists. We don't, make people famous. It's a 50-50 workload. You as a client need to come meet us halfway. We can pitch you to all the different broadcasts and publications and get you to the events. But if you don't show up, right, it's not worth it.
Right. So we do hear a lot though, especially in LA, that most of the time those paparazzi shots of celebrities, those were set up by the publicists. So is this a tactic that you come up with, or is there a specific client that you think this kind of tactic actually works in, or do you even not like doing something like that at all?
I will say this, that is a practice that is done in the PR industry. It is a normal. Is it something that I agree with or disagree? I think it really depends on the circumstance and what you're looking to do. Right? I think if it's done in a tasteful way, if it's done in a professional way, if it's done in the right way, it can help a client and boost their brand awareness. But if done wrong or done for the wrong reasons, it can fire back down the line. So I think it's a very delicate dance of understanding when and when not to do something like that.
Okay. Has it ever happened, or what do you do if, so usually they have managers and they have agents, and you feel that the branding of the celebrity is not going to work? What do you do? Do you just like, well, we can't work with you? Or is that something that you just work with?
Well, it depends, because it really also comes down to if the talent is willing to be flexible, right? If a talent is not flexible, then we might not want to move forward with that client.
Okay.
And the reason why I say flexible is because you have to be able to change with the times. Trends change, as you know, algorithms change, right? The way you approach different brands and brand sponsorships and what they look for change. So if a client isn't flexible in those different ways, then it becomes harder to help them build that brand. There's only so much you can do. Before it's like, what are we doing here? Because if we're both fighting with each other, and we're just chasing our tails, everybody's wasting their time.
Right, right. Okay, so what's media training?
Media training. Media training is what to say, when to say it, how to avoid a question, how to not answer the question, but sound like you answering the question. Yeah, that's all like media training.
Okay. It's actually one of the funny things spotting in an interview, like when somebody is obviously trying to avoid a question but not appear like they're avoiding a question. When you do media training, you kind of are aware of the practices of how that's actually handled. I remember watching Jerome Powell, the Fed secretary, and he was asked, like, how do you come up with how much rates to cut, the interest rates to cut? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting question. And he's sort of like, oh, we do this. And at the end of it, I think he gave like a 5-minute answer and not answer the question. I'm like, interesting. Jerome Powell is avoiding the question on how they actually decide on the cuts. So whoever did his media training is good.
He has a good publicist. I mean, even I think, I don't know if you remember, like a couple of months, maybe last year or a couple months ago, there was an interview, a live interview with Mel Gibson. And he was involved in some sort of hot seat question. So the reporter asked a question that was hot seat, highly charged. His publicist was also on the interview, and the publicist was so good, she interjected and cut the interview off. She's like, this is all the time that we have right now. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. That's a great publicist. Yeah. So, I mean, when you're lucky as a talent and you find a publicist like that, like those are keepers.
Right.
Because they're hard to come by.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And there are publicists when the celebrity is so like difficult to handle. I kind of understand why they're paid millions, because it is difficult to, like, the slap that the whole world heard. The Will Smith slap. Okay, before we get into that further, so I guess what is the participation of a PR agent or a publicist in building the brand of a celebrity? Do you simply build off what the manager and the agent already have, or do you sort of create your own and propose something different to the manager?
It depends on the talent. Every talent is different, but also know that the brand or the talent is also ever changing, right? Because sometimes talents might come up with their own, let's say, clothing brand or liquor brand, and that brand also needs to be built into their existing brand. And how does that differentiate from their existing brand? So it really depends. I mean, sometimes managers and agents will be a little bit more vocal and say certain, for example, don't put our client in pink, right? As an example. And then, sometimes from the publicist side, we'll say, make sure we are not photographing this talent at any event that's with a competitor liquor's logo in the background, right? So it's a constant collective working together, and it takes a lot of communication to be able to make this work. So it really depends on each client. Every client is completely different.
Okay. But doing this for a while, do you know already? Like, can you spot someone that will be a publicist by himself? Like, he can market himself already, or or spot someone who just has no hope? Like, it's just,
Of course. Of course.
and so if you are handed a client like that, what do you do?
What, someone who has no
You
hope?
know, like,
Well,
is it
then,
just that-
I mean, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Thank you for connecting with us. You know, right now we're not taking on new clients, but we'll put you on the wait list.
Have you ever fired anyone?
I have.
Okay.
It
Why?
was hard, but I had to, right? And it was an intern. She just wasn't performing.
Okay. But have you fired a client?
Have I fired a client? Yes, I have fired plenty.
Why? Why?
Plenty. Because, first of all, in order for us to work together requires honesty. Inside and out, we need to know the good and the bad, as I've mentioned before. The reason for that is if anything comes up, we don't want to get sideswiped. We want to know how to prepare for it in advance. So when it does come up, we're ready to go. There's been clients who have not been honest with us when it comes to certain things like this. We have to let them go, because if you can be, I guess, shady or hide certain things about this when we told you that we need to know up front to help you, then what else can you do? What, you know? So I think honesty is one of the biggest thing for us, you know, and I know that by asking people's personal, you know, lives, people get uncomfortable. But that's why we make sure that we let them know that, you know, we'll sign an NDA. We have no problem signing an NDA if we ask you all these questions. What you tell us is fully in confidential, you know, regards.
Right.
So I always say this, I feel like publicists are the keeper of secrets.
True.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like a nanny for the talents first.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any type of talent that you just will not work with? Like this, when this type of talent approaches me, sorry, I'm not going to work with you.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's a type. I would say there's a gut feeling.
Okay.
I think when you speak to somebody within the first 10 to 15 minutes, you already have a good gauge of what this person's going to be like. You know, they're going to be difficult to work with. Are they easy to work with? Are they going to be flexible? Are they going to be a problem client? You get a clue already.
Yeah.
So I always go with the gut.
Okay. And you said now that you are the sole owner of the company, but you have people now. You
Yeah.
actually have how many?
So we have 5 other publicists and we all work remotely.
Okay.
I feel like it's important to do it remotely because rents are high. There's no need to pay all this extra overhead, right? And everybody wants a better work-life balance, I included. So we do it all remote.
Okay. Do you plan on expanding and actually
No.
maybe? Okay.
No, no,
Why?
because you know I know that businesses, you know, a lot of times their goal is to expand. For us, it's not, because not every client is for us, and we don't want every client.
Okay.
We want to work with certain type and specific people, and we know exactly what that talent looks like or client looks like. And we also like the fact that, you know, we're able to have a more closer relationship with our clients. Some of our clients, we have their mother's phone numbers, right? You know, and when you start to expand, you lose the essence and the soul of a company very easily. And I just feel like, at least for me personally, I like that one-on-one interaction that I get to have with my clients.
Okay. There's press junkets happen a lot,
Yes.
especially for celebrities. So when your talent is in a press junket, who gives the talking points?
We do.
Okay,
We
so
do.
you give it to the reporters.
We do give it to the reporters. Sometimes reporters will give us as well. So, you know, depending on what the talking points are, because some talking points we don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll try to figure out, you know, like a happy medium, or we'll guide our client on how do you kind of circumnavigate around certain topics. You know, if it's one of those topics that's highly covered in the news, what do you say? What do you don't say? Should you keep it neutral? And, you know, all that.
Yeah, yeah. Because I remember when BTS did the first junket, and a lot of the fans were so upset because all the reporters asked, like every single reporter asked the question, who is the Western celebrity you wanted to work with? And so they were like, why does it come up? And I said, well, because the PR person asked them to ask that question. And so I just thought, you know, for consistency and for messaging. Okay, so how do you deal with reporters who sometimes you would tell them you can't talk about certain things, and then they still ask?
That's always a tricky one, right? Because it depends like on the situation. Something when it's live, it's the worst.
Right.
When it's like, oh, here's a piece of paper, just write your answer, you kind of glaze over it. But when it's live, you just have to be able to think on your feet. You can easily, and in a respectful way, say to the reporter, I'm not going to comment on this. I'm not going to answer this. You know, I'm happy to answer other questions. And some reporters are nice about it and they'll move on. Other reporters will rephrase the question and you have to recognize that that's a question that was rephrased. And, you know, I don't want to speak about this. I'm happy to speak on something else. Or even like what Mel Gibson's publicist did. You can say, you know what, thank you so much for taking the time. This is all the time that I have today.
Yeah. Okay. It's so tricky because I know it's the tendency of reporters. You say, don't talk about this, and they would want to talk about it.
But that's why they're reporters, right? And then the reporters who are really good, they know how to dig for information.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you got involved. Let's talk about Fashion Week. You got involved with Asian Fashion Week. So can you tell me, how did this project start and how did your involvement actually start?
Yeah, so Asian New Year Fashion Week is a platform that is focusing on celebrating and supporting the Asian community, right? So what we did was we found out through research, we asked 2 curiosity questions. First one, how many Asian designers are there in the United States, right? And the second question was, how many Asian models are there on the global runway? Now, we all know Vera Wang and Jason Wu, and, you know, we're thinking, yeah, we're going to have big numbers representing the Asian community. Okay, well, 11.2% of designers in the U.S. are Asian. Only 4% of the models are Asian on the global runways. Small number.
Very small.
Surprising, right?
Yeah.
So our client said, you know what? I'm going to create this platform to lend support to a community. There's so many talented voices in the Asian community that just need one opportunity to be seen by somebody, and it could kick open the door for them to the next, you know, success for them.
Right.
So this was created because they wanted to support a community. And I got involved with it because I really like what it's about. I think it's super inspiring to spearhead Asian New York Fashion Week. It's the first of its kind. They're doing this and no one else is doing it here in New York. And it takes courage. You got to be brave.
Yeah. Because it's like building something from the ground up. Because everyone knows about Fashion Week.
Yes.
But we don't hear about Asian Fashion Week. So, okay. So, what is the big goal? Well, first, what's going to happen? Let's start with that. What's going to happen in August? September. What's going to happen in September?
So September, their next show is September 13th, and it's going to be at Lavon Midtown in Times Square, which is a 10,000 square feet venue.
Okay.
They are going to have, I think, right now we're looking at about 22 designers.
Wow.
125 models.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be 4 runway shows, 12, 3, 6, and 9 p.m. So we are expecting about 1,000 attendees.
Okay.
So these are designers who are coming from all over. We have US based, we have designers coming from Japan. We have a Project Runway designer that's coming as well, showing. We have a Taiwanese celebrity designer that's also showing. So their hope is that this platform will allow these designers to get to the next level, like a stepping stone.
Right. So a lot of this has always puzzled me now, because a lot of the influencer industry has affected the fashion industry so much. So how important is it for the publicist to be able to invite the right influencers for this one?
I think inviting the right influencers is super important, because fashion and influencers, it's like a symbiotic kind of relationship, right? They kind of need each other.
Yeah.
But if you get the right influencer, it can make a huge difference.
Okay.
It really can.
So do you think there's going to be popular influencers in the venue?
Oh, there will be.
Okay. So this is just a one-day event.
It's a one-day event. They are planning for 2026 runway shows already. And they are talking about the possibility of having a February runway show and a September runway show. And they are also talking about taking it overseas.
Are they planning to do it doing anything in LA, Chicago?
They already did LA. So they did Miami before they did LA. So now they're really focusing on New York because there isn't one in New York.
Okay. All right. So one thing that has another thing that has always puzzled me is the amount of a lot of the Asian aesthetics get borrowed by the West. And I personally don't subscribe to the belief that culture is exclusive. I think it's meant to be shared. Um, it's just that I feel like if it is our culture, then I think we should also earn from it, right? Like if everyone else is earning from it, then we should also earn from it. What's keeping this? What is it that's keeping the success of Asian designers
It's a really
from?
great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a cultural component to this too, right? Because in the Asian community, we were raised on what? Solo sports, right? Piano and, violin, and you were one kid doing one thing. We weren't raised like in the American household, you're going to go do soccer, you're going to go do basketball, where it's a collective thing. So I think with that kind of mentality embedded within us, it becomes harder for us to then be open to, hey, let me just come into this community and see if this person can help me. It's more like I gotta be independent and can't rely on nobody. And I think a lot of Asian designers kind of fall into that, right? I have to be the one to make it. I have to be the one to do this. I have to be the one to whatever. But when you're starting out, you need somebody to reach over and give you a lending hand. And I think there's a pride component to it too, right? Because we don't want to come across as being needy or shameful to the family and we can't do things on our own. I think that's one piece, the cultural aspect. I think the other aspect too is there's that shyness to some of these Asian designers. They're very, very talented, but they're just not brave enough sometimes to put their work out there because they might not feel like they're good enough. But I think fashion is such a open to interpretation kind of industry that it's okay if you think it's not good enough because someone's going to think it's gorgeous.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So funding isn't really a part of it, or marketing. It's more the innate culture of Asians, you think, that's getting in the way of.
Well, funding is a problem for everybody who starts, right? Any business, funding is always super crucial. The marketing piece, I think it's a lot easier these days for the marketing than when I was doing it many, many years ago, because now you have access to social media. You have access to internet. Right? Back then, when ads needed to go out, it was this tedious thing of faxing a whole copy. You had to call to make sure. And then, you had to give them the color codes and all that kind of stuff, right? Now you have instant marketing, if you will, that really cuts down cost.
Okay. But so this dealing with all the designers that you've been dealing with for Asian Fashion Week, the Asian New York Fashion Week, what would you say is the thing that you think is most commonly done wrong for them in marketing and PR that you think if they fix can really bring their brand to another level?
I think it's the analysis paralysis. And what they do is they like to analyze, I need this to be perfect. This isn't perfect here. It's not perfect here. It's not perfect here. It's not perfect here, right? And then they start to panic because it's taking too long to perfect. And I always tell them, just put it out. Because everyone's first is horrible. Everyone. I don't care what you do. Everyone's first thing is really horrible. And you need to put your horrible out because you need the feedback. You need to know how you're going to tweak it, how you're going to change it, and if this thing is even worth it to continue to pursue. And I said, if you don't put it out, you're not going to get that information. Some people pay for that information.
Right.
Market research, they pay for it. I'm like, right now you have social media. You get to do it for free.
Right.
Do it.
Right. But you're also now an entrepreneur. Is it possible for somebody who's growing the business to also do their own marketing?
I think for sure.
Okay.
There's always guerrilla marketing, right?
Okay.
street style marketing. Very simple. You don't have to spend $1 million and buy like a $30,000 billboard in Times Square. Like, it's not necessary. I think if you started with the basics and very simple, I just saw another artist on social media. What he did was brilliant. And this is a great example of basic guerrilla marketing. He printed out parking tickets. On the parking tickets, he put the QR code to his album. And he went to a parking lot and put this ticket on every single car's window. And people started to download the QR code, which in turn was downloading his music.
Right.
He didn't spend a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
He printed this at home in his computer. So that's what I'm saying. Guerrilla marketing, you start there.
Okay. That's creative.
Isn't that creative? I loved it.
Okay, but your agency also helps in marketing. So
Yes.
if a label actually or a designer comes to you and say, okay, do my marketing, you also do that. What would you say is, if they exclusively just want to do social media marketing and it has to be organic, what would you say is the budget, acceptable budget?
We don't do social media marketing.
Mm,
We don't do that. And the reason for that is because everyone has an aesthetic
yeah,
to their social media. And for us, it's a waste of time.
right.
For us, right? Because the individual might want to do their social media a certain way. What we've learned was that what ends up happening is there's a lot of, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this, let's change this, let's delete that because my angle was off. Okay. It's not worth it
Yeah.
for
yeah.
us.
Right, right. So most of the marketing that you do would be more traditional.
Traditional marketing or creative marketing.
Okay, all right. Organizing an event like Asian Fashion Week, how much does it cost?
We can't tell you the secret sauce. Put it this way, it's not cheap. It's
Okay.
not cheap. And it's difficult because there's a lot of moving parts. Everything costs during New York Fashion Week.
Yeah, right.
Everything.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so where is the funding coming?
It's a self-funding process.
Wow.
It is very difficult,
Right, yeah.
right? They do have one or two sponsors that do come in, but every season it's a prayer and a hope.
Right, right, right. Well, the hope is that for more sponsors to actually come in eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do some of the fun stuff. We were just talking about it. Like, there are horror clients or horror events, like that Will Smith slap, for example. And I think one of the defining moments for me for PR was when I saw his PR agent, his publicist, on the floor right after it happened. Like, she was on the floor, and I was like, oh, she's working her magic for him to not get kicked out of the event. And I guess it worked. Okay, for my question for you would be, if you had a client like that who did something so unexpected, where do you even go from there?
Legal is the first line of defense.
Right.
You would have to do legal. I would have to say legal would always be my first line of defense. Because we need to know how do we protect our client, because
Right.
ultimately this is still our client, even though
Right.
something bad just happened, right? And then we have to know, secondly, how do we protect ourselves,
Right.
right? So legal is the first. That's where I go.
Yeah, yeah. If you have a client like Kanye, would you keep them? Because he was good in the first. He was, and like
He was amazing.
And I mean, as an artist, I don't think anybody can deny how just great he is. And then he just started going off the rails. Would you keep somebody like him?
I probably wouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
because I value my sanity. He would be a tough client. He
Right.
would be a tough client. I don't think anyone can discredit the fact that he is extremely talented, and he's quite eclectic in how he views the world. But I think that, as he's gotten older, maybe he needs to get medical attention. Maybe he doesn't. Who knows, right? I don't know his full background and all of that, but just from what I'm seeing, I probably wouldn't.
Okay. Because I don't know who's handling his PR right now, but I thought to myself, maybe that person is just like that person needs prayers at this stage.
Yeah. But I give his publicist a lot of credit.
Yeah.
You know, if he has one right now, I give that person a lot of credit.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess for my last question, if anybody who wants to get into PR, what would be your advice?
I would say research. Because PR work is not as glamorous as everyone thinks it is.
Right.
There is a lot of hard work. There is a lot of hours you put in. There is a lot of times that you're not going to be seen. You are fully in the background.
Right.
You are not there to be Little Miss Celebrity on the runways, right? Like, that's not what PR is. It's grueling. You will have clients calling you at all hours of the night for all types of emergency. My phone is on 24 hours a day,
Oh my God.
and I get phone calls 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's like emergencies.
Okay. So if they ever want to get in touch with you, where do they go?
Just go to the PR agency, the chigroup.co, and on Instagram it's TheChigroup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Connie.
Thank you for having me. It was
Of
fun.
course, yeah. And I am looking forward to the Fashion Week.
Thanks.